Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to the House Rules and Executive Nominations Committee for our first meeting of the 2026 legislative session. We're under the leadership of our new speaker, Jocelyn Pena-Melnick, who for a long time was a member of this committee, but now as speaker, she has designated others for this position. We have several new members, quite a few new members. So I would like to offer a bit of explanation of how we're going to proceed with this meeting before we start. We are conducting a public hearing on two bills, just like any other committee. I want to stress that this is a public hearing. It's not a time to debate, but rather to listen respectfully to the witnesses on all sides and ask relevant questions on the legislation before us. After the sponsors panel, we will be taking all the witnesses. We have more than 200 witnesses signed up. So we're going to start with the people who are here in person, and then we will go to those who are online. We will have a 2-minute limit for all the witnesses after the sponsors panel. The sponsor is going to be given a lot of latitude to explain this complicated, long anticipated bill. And and we're looking forward to hearing what he has to say. I'm going to ask that the members please stick to the legislation in your questions and try to stay on topic. Ask the questions you need to ask. Only committee members may ask questions. We're not going to have dialogue back and forth with the witnesses. The subject matter of the bills is of great importance and expect everyone to be respectful, witnesses and members alike. And I will do my best as well. We're human and we know that people have very strong feelings about these things, but we want to conduct this whole hearing the way it should be, which is with respect and with the seriousness that it should be considered. And with that, I'm going to recognize the sponsor of the bill, which is House Bill 488, Delegate Wilson. Delegate Wilson. And Governor, first, let me welcome you to our committee, and I'm happy to see you here, and I expect we'll be hearing from you shortly.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Never thought I'd be in this room again. Too soon? Too soon? I'm here to introduce House Bill 488. I guess I should introduce my panel. Governor Moore. Just for clarity, everybody here knows we're not here in this position because we chose to be, because we want to be. We're here because our current president and the current administration, basically in a desperate attempt to rig the next election in the House of Representatives and prevent that next election from delivering any meaningful check on his power, chose to call first the governor of Texas and tell him that he deserved 5 more votes, and again in Missouri and the Carolinas. And I guess Marylanders just, we can't be expected to just idly sit by and hope things get better, because when someone tries to silence our voice, it's necessary to step into the void and enter the fray. So we're here to say to the federal workers in D.C. suburbs that your voices are not going to be muted by the gerrymandering in Texas. The voices of the school teachers in Baltimore City will not be silenced by the gerrymandering in Missouri. Voices of the small business owners on the Eastern Shore who believe that health care should be affordable. The peaceful protesters who are in fear that they have to step on the streets and possibly lose their lives exercising their First Amendment rights. That those voices will not be suppressed by the gerrymandering in North Carolina, Ohio, or Florida. This new map is our clarion call and bullhorn, to say that our votes should count and our voice should matter. Here today to present a redistricting map for Maryland, for the state and for the people. This map, we don't have to really choose between protecting historic communities and defending against this administration's partisan assault. We'd have to choose between districts that look good and districts that do good. And we can enact a map that strengthens community representation, complies with traditional redistricting criteria, and ensures Maryland's representatives' voices are no longer stifled or ignored on a national level. Briefly, the governor's redistricting advisory committee was announced on November 24th. I was appointed to serve in this bipartisan committee as the speaker's representative. We held 7 public hearings from November to January. We solicited public input from across the state and received over 40 maps, or concepts, I should say, of maps from the public for consideration. After voting, GRAC issued a map recommendation to the governor and then to this legislature on January 20th. The map before you today is based on the concept of a map that was presented at GRAC. Feedback that was received by the public, and it complies with all federal constitutional requirements. Districts are equally populated and not drawn for any prohibited racial purposes. This map brings similar communities together, respects all political boundaries. In fact, it avoids splitting up any incorporated city or town anywhere besides Baltimore City. In Baltimore City's population, the majority of it remains in one district. Creating 3 representatives within Baltimore amplifies the residents' not only representation but voices, and strengthens our state's largest city with the strategic and economical hub that we need to protect. Montgomery County, Maryland's largest county, keeps 3 members of Congress with practical district lines. The map keeps Fort Meade and the Columbia Tech Corridor along Route 32 in the same district, ensure thousands of Marylanders working in the cyber and tech industries are represented together. The map connects the Bay Bridge on both sides of the bay. The community includes hundreds of thousands of Marylanders, including 78,000 daily commuters from Annapolis to the mid-shore. The 4th district remains largely intact, serving the significant federal workforce and population in that area. The 5th district continues to serve rural communities down through southern Maryland. The map respects the rural communities from the western Howard to Cecil County in the 3rd district. Some folks are going to say that this the state law prevents the General Assembly from protecting Marylanders in this way. Basically, that we have to be feckless, accept the degradation of our democracy, suffer the privation as spectators as our state is diminished, and sit benighted in intellectual and moral ignorance as our children's future is destroyed. That incipient misgiving is entirely incorrect. In fact, the state constitution is completely silent as to congressional redistricting, which gives our General Assembly the flexibility it needs to ensure Maryland voters are effectively represented, even if, and especially if, other states are attempting to increase their own power at our expense. Flexibility is more than an opportunity, it's a responsibility, and it is an obligation to defend our people, our values, defend our state. Additionally, another bill component beyond the map is a ballot question, inviting full public input. In approval of this map, it will continue through 28 and 2030. There's also clarification in the Maryland Constitution, Article 3, Section 4 requirements specifying that legislative districts only apply to the General Assembly, as historical context and legislative intent has already done many times before. It contains an authorization for a future need to rapidly address congressional redistricting, that the General Assembly may grant original jurisdiction to the Maryland Supreme Court to minimize delay and potential chaos. As I stated in the beginning of my testimony, the whys we're here is pretty obvious. The president instructed Texas to redistrict in order to gain more seats for his party in the United States House of Representatives. So far, 6 states have moved, redrawing maps to extinguish any opportunity to stop Trump's cruelty, corruption, and lawlessness. We are here because Maryland will not and should not go quietly into this dark night. Every day, Americans are being tested. Children don't know if their classmates are going to be kidnapped by masked agents. Journalists don't know if they're going to be sued, harassed, or taken to court. Public officials, including each one of you sitting here today, you don't know if you're going to be investigated or indicted for challenging this regime. And yet we see people leaning in and answering the questions and being tested and standing. with unbelievable courage. And now it's our turn. So we now have to face this test with moral clarity and principled reasoning. Marylanders do not enjoy the luxury of allowing other states to fight for us. Our people, the voters of Maryland, have their precious political right to be heard in the halls of Congress. Passing this map is how we fight chaos and corruption. Passing this map is how we operationalize our oath to be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of Maryland. Passing this map is to remind the entire world that America can do better, that we are better, and we will be better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governor Moore?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair Healy. And thank you to Vice Chair Holmes. Sorry, don't need. Thank you to Chair Healy. Thank you, Vice Chair Holmes. Thank you to all the members of the Rules and Executive Noms Committee. And I'm very proud to be here with Delegate C.T. Wilson in support of House Bill 488. And I'm proud to be here because from day one, I have been very clear that if there was a national conversation happening right now about fair maps across this country, then Maryland would be a part of that conversation. That Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have asked states to re-examine their maps. Yet they've asked states to do it in an unthoughtful way, and to do it in a way where it was not about hearing the voices of the people, but it was actually about suppressing the voices of the people. But in Maryland, we decided not to do that, because in Maryland, we will hear the will of the people. And that's why on November 4th, I announced the reconstitution of the Governor's Redistricting Advisory Commission. And for the past 2 months, any Marylander from any region, from any background, from any political perspective could testify and make their voices heard. The commission's recommendation was shaped by public submissions. It was shaped by public hearings. It was shaped by public feedback. And that is how our democracy is supposed to work. To create more competition and accountability and not less. To elect candidates of Marylanders' choosings. To be more accurate and have an accurate reflection of how Marylanders live. And to ensure that their voices and concerns are fairly and fully represented in Congress. It is imperative that Maryland do its part to ensure that Congress is able to function as a meaningful check on executive overreach. And now is the time for the General Assembly to do what Marylanders expect, debate the map, improve it if necessary, and then take the vote. Because make no mistake, what the President of the United States is doing right now is political redlining. And it's not lost to me that I am the only black governor in this country, and only the third elected black governor in the history of this nation. And Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and their allies in the states that he suggested are doing everything in their power to silence the voices and trying to eliminate black leadership, elected leadership, all over this country. So no, I will not sit quiet. And the audacity of those who are telling me to do so shows that they have no understanding of the journey of so many who came before us. We are watching a federal administration that is breaking the law to inflict harm on Americans. We are watching violations of basic tenets of the First and the Second Amendments while we're being gaslit by federal leadership. We are watching an administration disenfranchise Americans under the guise of making America great again, and they are now trying to make this pain permanent. So I know that history is not going to remember the Trump-Vance administration kindly. But to all those who kowtow, for all those who are trying to move the goalposts, for all those who are looking for all the reasons why we should not respond, instead of using your energy to find ways to respond, history will remember you worse. And I urge the passing of this bill.
Thank you very much, Governor. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few questions as soon as this kicks on. Good afternoon, Delegate Wilson, Governor. Page 40 of your bill says that there will be a constitutional amendment that will clarify that certain standards in the Maryland Constitution apply only to districts used to elect members of the General Assembly. What does that mean?
Basically, there was a non-binding ruling that came out some years ago with regards to the way Article 3, Section 4 was read. Now, when you read Article 3, Section 3, Section 5, Section 6, the term legislative districts is and always has been referring to the General Assembly. And in fact, the confusion even stems back to 1972 when we had our last constitutional Congress. And at that time, I believe the judge that I'm talking about referred to that time as far as that should be, that Article 3, Section 4 should also include congressional districts. However, the ballot question in 1972 was only specifying the legislative districts, i.e. the General Assembly. Ergo, she inferred that our intent, because we didn't say not Congress, must have been Congress. However, to be clear, while we know that wasn't the intent of that legislature, we do know it was not the intent of the people, because the people, when they voted on that ballot question, said nothing about Congress, because the question said nothing about Congress. And I know the intent of that body was not to mislead the people, because it would have been an illegal ballot question. This is merely for purposes of clarity and continuity, because Article 3, Section 3, Section 5, and Section 6 refer to the legislative districts as only the General Assembly.
I appreciate that. I want to focus a little bit on what this actually means. So you would agree with me that your district and mine, our districts have to consist of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and due regard has to be given to natural boundaries and the boundaries of political subdivisions for the way everyone sitting here gets elected. But your bill wants to say that doesn't apply for congressional representation in this state. Those standards that apply to us, they don't apply to this map, because they'd be thrown out. This map would be thrown out, most likely in a court of law, if we applied those standards, correct?
Number one, no. And let me hit your first question. No, I'm not saying that they shouldn't apply. I'm saying that they don't, and we're clarifying. And again, to be very clear, in 1967, when we were under federal mandate to fix our election system, there was a ballot question that included both the General Assembly and congressional maps. And that was voted down by the populace. And we are merely representatives of the people. And the people voted that down in 1967. But in 1970 and 1972, when we had ballot questions concerning redistricting, it specified only the General Assembly. And the people voted for that. We are voices of the people. If there was some confusion, we want to make sure that is clear. But
so I just want to be clear, you don't want those standards to apply to congressional districts.
Those standards do not apply.
And your bill would expressly say that. Not only would you just say, hey, as a student of the law, which I know you are, you don't think they apply today, very different than Judge Battaglia, former Maryland Supreme Court, U.S. Attorney, Chief of Staff to Barbara Mikulski. She's not from my party. She had a very different position 3.5 years ago. But under your bill, not only would you say that you think they don't apply, but you would make sure that they not apply, because you would state that in this bill, that those concepts, compactness, contiguity, communities that have natural boundaries, that doesn't matter anymore for congressional districting in Maryland under this bill, correct?
And I'll say, to be very clearly, until the people say otherwise, it does not apply.
Why do you need to put it in the bill then?
For clarification, because to be very clear, the people had a chance to make it apply in 67, and they said no. And in 1970 and again in 72, and no matter how powerful we may think we are not supposed to override the will of the people.
Okay. I only have two other quick questions, and I think by the tenor of both of your remarks, I think I know the answer to this. These maps are clearly driven for a purely partisan purpose. No one talked about uniting communities of interest. No one talked about fairness. I think the word was used. Everyone talked about Donald Trump. Everyone talked about the House of Representatives. Did the commission utilize things like partisan value index or specific numbers as to party registration and how party registration would play out, or those D+5, D+10? Did you use those numbers and discuss them when you made the map?
Number one, we did not, because that's not what the commission was set for. But to be very clear, the Court of Appeals has already rejected a mathematical test for compactness. So if that's something, and they even said, if that's something that the Maryland General Assembly wishes to add, we can do so. So it's not even applicable.
So you guys didn't take into effect what the practical impact of the votes would be, whether a Democrat or Republican would be more likely to win based upon statistical data when you made these maps. You're saying that no one discussed that, no one provided that information, and not a single member of that commission during the process.
Well, I'll be very clear, and I think you know this. The reason we're not doctors is because we're not good at math. So
That's why I went to law school, so
there
we
you
could
go.
avoid math.
That's why we both went to law school. So make no mistake, that was never discussed as far as any mathematical equation, nor is it accepted by the courts.
My last question for you, the precinct data that you used, when was that pulled from? Because you testified before, and you're absolutely right, the concept map that was passed a couple weeks ago would have been prima facie unconstitutional because of the population variations between the districts. So you had to go back for the purposes of this bill and resort the precincts. What year, what month, what time did you use the precinct data to come up with this map to make sure that it's correct now?
Once this bill was presented as a bill and was again, had to be zeroed out, that was done by DLS. There was no, to my knowledge, because I did not decide how to zero it out.
So we're not sure if it's precinct data for 2026 or if it's precinct data back from 2022 when the last maps were drawn. That's an open question.
It's an open question.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Delegate Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Buckles inspired me. I might have a couple questions here as well. So 1968 and 1970, you said Marylanders had a chance to vote
67, 70, and 72, yes.
And your bill gives them another chance to vote on it.
That's
doesn't
correct.
it? So Marylanders will ultimately be able to decide what map we use. Great. Governor, you know, a lot has been said to me as I've talked about this over the last few days. You know, one vote. How important is one vote in Congress? That's what we're talking about, one vote. I did note recently there was a War Powers Act in Congress that failed by one vote. So I want to give you a chance to respond. How important is one vote to protecting our democracy?
Well, I think there are instances like the War Powers Act that that one vote does determine which way it goes. But I think it also just goes and it asks the fundamental question of how important is democracy? Like the whole idea of democracy is that every vote matters. Every vote should count. And so the only thing that we're asking throughout this entire process is let's actually have something that is informed by Marylanders, that Marylanders have had the past 2 months to be able to make their voices heard, unlike, frankly, what you're seeing in other parts of the country where they're literally doing this thing in a back room with a Sharpie pen, where we've actually said, let's actually invite the input of the people of our state to be able to determine what the future of their democracy looks like. So, you know, I think that it's an important question of what's the value of one vote. And I think the answer to that is actually a question of what's the value of democracy.
I agree.
If I could chime in, I just want to say that for anybody here who's ever served, you know this. Every soldier on the battlefield counts. Every single one can make the difference. Each one of us, our votes can make a difference. So it is very important. Even one vote counts.
I agree. And last question, Madam Chair, if that's okay. You know, I know that there had been a bill on national redistricting reform in Congress. And I know every single Democrat in Congress voted for that. I certainly support that. Governor, would you support national redistricting reform?
I absolutely would. I think that this is a bigger conversation that Congress should be taking up. It's my hope that at some point Congress will take it up. But at this point, if we are having individual states that are being selected by the president to go through mid-decade redistricting, then I think it would be derelict for Maryland just simply to sit on our hands. The hope and the aspiration is one day we will have Congress take this up. And I know that, you know, for example, Congressman Harris, when it was proposed, he voted against it. But I do think at some point I would love for Congress to be able to say this is a national issue, so we need to take a national scope on it.
Well, I would invite Congressman Harris to get on board with every Democrat in Congress. With him and his Freedom Caucus, we could put this issue to bed once and for good.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate. Governor, I understand that you have other business to conduct today, that this is not your only gig for the day. So I want to thank you very much for being here and for testifying. And I know the governor has to leave, but we will continue the questions with the sponsor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so
Vice
much.
Chair. Thank you.
Well, I'm not used to witnesses being dismissed in the middle of a hearing, but that's okay. So Delegate Wilson, question for you, and I heard this was brought up by you or possibly the governor. You said that this is in direct response to what's happening in Texas, Missouri, and the Carolinas. So can you tell me what is happening in Texas, Missouri, and the Carolinas?
They're doing mid-cycle redistricting.
Okay, and what don't you like about that?
Well, as per our amendment, it's, I don't believe anybody sitting here really enjoys it. So there is no which say what I like about it. What I will say is in Texas, for example, what they've done is they've extinguished at least 5 Democratic seats. Well, I think it's going to pan out much different. But their goal, as Donald Trump says, he deserves 5 more seats, ergo Republicans, in the House. And so they went ahead and redistrict mid-cycle to get rid of 5 Democrat seats.
Okay. So the governor, before he left, said that they were doing it to gain more seats. Would you say that's a fair depiction of what's happening in those states?
Yes.
So is that why you put in this bill, to gain another seat in Maryland?
Well, as you well know, as an attorney, that political processes can be considered. Political goals can be considered. There's no factors subordinated. So that is not the only rationale. That's not a rationale. And in fact, the way the maps are now, they make it even more competitive. And it forces whoever's elected to go into, I would consider it, uncomfortable territory. Because at the end of the day, 5 of the 8 districts capture less Democratic votes than they do now. And so there is an argument, and we know this because we've elected Republican governors in my time, that it is no guarantee that just because the maps have been changed, that they will be Democrat seats.
Okay. Do you know how many Republican congressmen we had in 2002?
I was in law school, no.
4. Do you know how many we had in 2012?
No.
2.
Okay.
Do you know how many we had in 2022? 1.
With 1.
And is the goal of this bill to make it 8-0?
No. Again, there are always political concerns when you're redrafting a bill, and there may be some hope that somehow we can be successful, but that's not the only goal. Again, bringing the communities together, drawing what we would consider a much more, as I explained, the way the map is drawn, bringing these like communities together was also a very important goal.
All right. Madam Chair, for my final question, this just goes to the process of the committee or the commission. You know, I read in the paper several comments from the Senate president. You know, in one particular comment, he was shocked that there was a hearing and a vote. So my question is very direct, and it's, did any of the members have any ex parte meetings or discussions outside of the public view for the vote on that redistricting commission?
I'm not that engaged, no. I mean, well, I'll say this. I can speak for myself, and the answer is no, because there's really no rationale to go beyond it. And again, whatever I've said in any meetings or any voting sessions, I think they're trying to stick with their tradition of not having the voting sessions be public. I don't know the rationale because I didn't make the decision, but there's nothing I haven't said in any of those closed meetings that I wouldn't say publicly.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's see. Delegate Riley?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So thank you for being here, Delegate Wilson. I appreciate it. And it was very interesting hearing your testimony and also from Governor Moore. I had a question that kind of at the beginning of the bill and kind of at the end of the bill. Could you explain to me how this particular bill qualifies as an emergency measure pursuant to the being necessary for the imminent preservation of public health or safety?
I think this weekend might have answered that question, should have. But I believe what's going on in this country in the erosion of democracy, I'm, free gun owner here. Hey, I'm nervous for you too, because, at this point we're being told that they can just knock and ask you if you have papers. I don't know if any of you carry your passports, because I don't. And I do know that while right now they're targeting individuals that may, be of color, there are a lot of people here, a lot of European countries that also may be here illegally. So I think everybody is at risk. And I think the fact that they're now making it clear that they can violate your Fourth Amendment rights by just knocking and asking, which is very reminiscent of the slave catchers, that they're going to see who's there. And at some point, it does become a national emergency. If you look at, we almost went to war with NATO because there is no checks and balances and there's nobody to stand up. Even the way that, and again, I'm not sure how people think, but what you've seen, the way, the lack of humanity, it's being attributed to this country by the way we handle individuals that may be undocumented, that may be part of the system. So I could not see a more emergent situation in my life. The fact that they have taken down the bust of Martin Luther King in the White House, the fact that they have made it very clear that my daughters don't need to learn about African-American contributions in World War II veterans. They even went so far as to go to, I think, the Netherlands, and out of 12 of the plaques, they took 2 plaques down. The only 2 they talked about, this is where 8,300 soldiers were resting, fighting the Nazis. There are only 2 plaques there talking about African-American contribution, and they took those down. So for me, it is an emergency.
Okay, I heard what you had to say. So to me, with that answer, I think you just verified Delegate Pippi's answer that yes, your idea for this particular bill is to make it 8-0 because it's all about politics. Second question would be, if that's okay.
Please refrain from arguing with the witness.
Thank you. Well, he kind of refused the answer, but that answer kind of explained.
Well, I did think I tried to my best to answer.
I know.
Delegate Riley, please.
Yes, sorry, Madam Chair. Second question has to do with the fiscal note. We know the situation that we're in currently with our budget. It's been, it started with the deficit 3 years in a row now. And the fiscal note says that it will be significantly affected onto our local jurisdictions. For several years now, again, we keep passing, unfunded mandates onto our local jurisdictions. I see this as another one for year 2026, 2027. Was this actually the cost of implementing this bill? Was that discussed in the commission at all? Or is there any, funds that will be going that way? Or is it just something that, again, the taxpayer's going to foot the bill for?
Well, again, so number one, no, the cost was never brought up. There was never a discussion. And I think that I don't want to keep going over it, but it's, what's your democracy worth? And that's how you have to balance it out. If you're all right with where things are going, I could see that maybe this wouldn't be a worthy investment but for the majority of the folks that do, I think it is a worthy investment.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Madam Chair.
I get up and actually point at that map, if I may, because this is the reason why we're truly here, if I could. Well, I'll go ahead and point and try to do my best to explain. I know I have to be on the mic, actually.
Delegate, I think you need to stay there because the camera focuses on you speaking.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. So I'll go ahead and explain. Okay. Yeah, there. Well. You can't really say it. I'll just do my best to explain. So most of the testimony that I've heard today as to why we need to pass this bill has more to do with the decisions that are being made in Washington right now. But what we're actually doing in essence is we're just changing the map. And so my question is, so the part of Cecil County and Harford County now that will become in District 3, now it's in District 1. how by moving Cecil and Hartford County into Howard County, how is that going to resolve all these issues that we have with President Trump right now?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Well, here, let me rephrase my question. So the reason why we're passing this bill is because we don't like what's going on in Washington, D.C. We've said that crystal clear. We made that crystal clear. All the reasons that you had stated, most of it's criminal justice stuff. Most of it has to do with his reaction to immigration, the riots that are going on in different parts of the country. We don't like all these things that are happening, so we have to change our maps. And we have to pass this bill that's going to change the map. That's essentially what we're doing. We're just changing the districting maps. How is taking people from, or changing the maps and taking folks out of Hartford and Cecil and putting those votes into Howard County, how is that going to affect the change that you're looking for as far as national policy?
So I think what it does is it now, as I've said earlier, because it makes the maps more competitive. So whether it's an R or a D that is going to be representing those districts, or that district, they now have to go into what I would consider other areas. And they need to be, they need to answer to just more than a narrow group of thought process and people, a group of people with a narrow thought process. They have to expound, and they're now accountable to more people of a varied trains of thought.
Only District 1, though. We're only doing it in District 1. We're keeping, you even said in Baltimore City, you're keeping those folks intact. Southern Maryland's generally intact. Western Maryland grows a little bit more into Montgomery County, but the real changes is District 1. We're not doing it anywhere else in the state except for District 1. So
obviously, as you know, everything has to change. District 1, District 4 changes quite a bit. As far as who's moving where,
District 4, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
And so there are multiple changes. Nothing really is staying the same. In fact, even in the Baltimore City, because now those 3 members are going to have to not only deal with the, Baltimore County and those areas, they have to come into the city to talk about their problems too. So it's going to make them more engaged into Maryland as a whole, because it doesn't just bifurcate it. It's not just party. It's different experiences, different livelihoods, the way different people live.
So we're doing this so we can challenge our legislators? Is that what you're saying? And we're not doing it because of federal policy right now? We're not doing it because we're disagreeing with the senator from Maryland who represents District 1? Is that what you're saying? So I'm confused about your testimony is what I'm saying. I don't understand the purpose of passing this bill.
They're not mutually exclusive. So number one, because the Supreme Court makes it very clear under Rucho that the Constitution gives us the right to do this. Our Maryland Constitution is staying silent on congressional redistricting. And yes, the hope is whoever gets in that district will be answering to more than just, like say, District 1. They're going to have to go into moderate areas, possibly even Democrat areas, and be answering to them as well, which brings them back to Maryland as a whole. Because this is not guaranteeing that you're going to get 8 progressives or 7 Democrats or 8 Democrats. What it's guaranteeing is, and so for some of these areas that have been now spread out, that whoever wins that is now answerable to a larger populace, a more broader thinking populace.
Well, we know that's what's going to happen. I mean, if you're going to sit there and say that you don't know that, it was R plus 10 and 1 before, now it's not. If you're going to stand here to say that today, you're a lot smarter than that, Delegate Wilson. I'll give you a lot more.
To be very clear,
Excuse me, Delegate. Do not argue with the witness, please.
And to explain, I did not say R's and D's.
This is impacting my district by a lot, Madam Chair.
That's fine, but I did not say R's and D's. I said whoever won is going to have to answer to more. Let's say it's a D. Well, they're going to have to answer to a lot more Republicans now.
Sure. All right, so moving to something that's completely different. So part of this bill right now very explicitly says that communities of interest and commonality within communities isn't something that we are necessarily going to consider, or we don't have to consider anymore, right? But you also said in your testimony that this does that anyhow. Just looking at the maps, though, I'm not sure that it really does. I mean, I represent probably almost 2/3 of Cecil County now. They're more common with the Eastern Shore than they are Baltimore County or Baltimore City and Northern Howard County. And I will also say, I don't live in Columbia, Maryland, but I can't imagine that they're more common. They have more in common to Salisbury or Denton or Greensboro or Chestertown than Chesapeake City does. So can you tell me if it's a priority for neighborhoods? Based on, I guess, the input that you guys received from all of these community hearings that most people didn't know about, I can't imagine that the folk, did the people in Cecil County say that they wanted to be grouped together with Carroll County, or did the people in Columbia say that they wanted to be grouped with the Eastern Shore? I mean, how did you guys arrive at that? I mean, can you tell me about the outreach, the outreach process that you guys went through to be able to arrive at this? Because I can tell you by just looking at that and knowing what I know about the folks back home, there is very little commonality and interest between these communities at all.
And which communities again we talking about, sir?
I'm talking about the biggest change to this map. I'm talking about how we're moving folks in District 1 off the Eastern Shore, and we're moving it over to Columbia, Howard County.
And you're saying that you don't believe that they have anything in common?
They have absolutely nothing in common. And I can't imagine that the public input gave you that information to be able to make that change.
And as I said, I explained during my original talking points what we were focused on as far as areas, district, like, you know, the tech corridors, Highway 32, 32. Not every single person with everything in common is going to be grouped together. We focused on major areas, the major things that we could do.
We have no tech corridors on the Eastern Shore. I get it. I mean, I get it. All right, that's my final question, Madam Chair. I don't want to feel like I'm interrogating, but these are points that if I didn't make these, and I didn't ask these questions, and I go back home, they're going to say, well, what are we sending you over to Annapolis for? So, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Szeliga.
There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said that you're not good at math. I'm going to help you out here a little bit. Of the 532 people who signed up to testify on your congressional map, 404 registered no votes, unfavorable. That means 76% of the people that weighed in are opposed and 24% are in favor. Additionally, I tuned in to all of your virtual commission hearings where I'll point out not one single person was seen in person, which discriminates against people who don't have rural broadband and people who cannot tune into a Zoom meeting, but the majority of that testimony when taken in whole was also opposed. You continue to use the word fair, but my 5th grade granddaughter could look at the map we have today and that map and know it's not fair. I want to point out that authoritarian regimes and systems eliminate their political competition instead of persuading voters. This map, you've said, has been widely reported, and your rhetoric here today is talking about eliminating Maryland's last Republican seat in Congress, which essentially silences the voice of millions of people. So I'd like to ask you, how can you ask us to trust democracy when you're taking it so lightly?
Definitely not taking it lightly. So I do, I'm not going to own that aspersion that you cast, but you hit like 5, 6 things. I'm trying to go, the first one was access.
Access to your commission hearings,
yes,
correct?
Because I guess just from my own understanding and the way is almost everybody has a cell phone. In fact, a lot of people testified from cell phone. Even if they don't have rural broadband, they do have cell phone coverage, therefore, versus trying to pack 200 people, if we're lucky, into a room. And actually doing the Zoom, as we've found out in this House, gives more people who wouldn't have the opportunity to drive anywhere, depending on where we put them, because there's no way we'd be able to satisfy, to your point, unless we met in every town and every city. We knew we couldn't do that. So the best way that we thought to do it was to allow everybody to at least log on by phone, because I live in Southern Maryland. Not everybody has rural broadband, but they do have a cell phone. And to log in and say their piece. So far as access, I believe that meeting in person definitely limits, and we've expanded in this House for just that reason, to make sure more people can participate. I don't remember your second point. Your third point was about being fair. And I guess I'm trying to understand you say silencing the voices. So I haven't read your amicus brief in Texas, but I'm sure you oppose it there.
Did Texas eliminate every Democrat, or do they still have 24% of their congressional delegation being Democrat?
That's down dramatically.
They did not eliminate every Democrat. They have not elected a statewide Democrat in Texas in decades, and they did not eliminate every Democrat voice in their congressional delegation.
So my point remains the same. So you didn't oppose it there, clearly. And I guess you're not going to oppose Florida, who's going to have to go against their own constitution to do it. So that's the thing about principles. Either they are or they aren't. So either you oppose it or you don't. It sounds like you oppose it. But to say what is fair, because every single Marylander has a right to vote for their congressman, that has not been extinguished. Now, I'd say that's not always been the case in Maryland in this country. But to be very clear, everyone still has a voice. Everyone can still vote. Being a Republican, number one, or a Democrat are choices. Some people sit at this table have voted Republican before. That doesn't make me a protected class or a class of people at all. So to say that people don't have a voice, that's like saying people in the Southern Maryland don't have a voice because they're represented by Steny Hoyer. No, they have a voice. He's just Democrat. And again, wherever you're going with that class thing, I don't agree. I don't think that most of us in this room are that far apart when it comes to a vast majority of our values. So to say that somehow we're extinguishing the voice of an entire people, because I know that Andy Harris does not represent the Republicans in Southern Maryland, but they still have a voice. So to be very clear, and I don't remember the authoritarianism. I find that almost comical with what we're facing now on a national stage. The fact that, and I will say this, that when we do this debate on the House floor, assuming it gets out of rules, I have the very real fear of being investigated by the DOJ. There's nothing more authoritarianism than that. There's nothing more authoritarianism than saying I can come knock on your door and ask for your papers. And if you're not supposed to be armed while coming to a protest, Kyle Rittenhauser was a hero, but this man is an assassin. There's nothing more authoritarian than firing people because they sent out a meme of Charlie Kirk, or having the FCC going after licenses because you don't like the way they make fun of you. For Christ's sake, you shut down PBS. I don't know if you're worried about authoritarianism, I would ask you to broaden your horizons because it's out there.
Well, I would say this bill is authoritarian, and I think eliminating every Republican voter and voice in this state is authoritarian, and you can use all the hyperbole you'd like.
Those are facts, not hyperbole.
I'd like to say that senior citizens who are not handy with the phone were absolutely disenfranchised by your commission meetings. My mom can drive. She's amazing. But
she doesn't have a phone.
She does, but asking her to figure out a Zoom call is something quite different. So I would just a couple additional questions for a potential lawsuit. Can you tell us, was the governor or his senior staff directly involved in reviewing, revising, or approving maps, the draft maps?
Nothing to my knowledge.
Okay, and were any partisan consultants, campaign operatives, or party officials involved formally or informally in drawing the maps?
I think that was Mr. Coons was the one who drew the maps.
That was my next question. Who drew the map?
His name is Coons.
Spell that.
K-U-N-Z.
And is he in DLS?
No.
Who is he?
He's a citizen.
He was
one of the maps presented. I stated earlier, these were maps presented by the public. This was the map that was adopted.
So
these weren't drafted by DLS.
But you said you took a conceptual map and then you had to draw
Because I
it.
think there were, in certain districts, it was like 1,000 people off, and that had to be zeroed out. Otherwise, it wouldn't be constitutional.
Okay, so who in DLS drew the map?
No idea.
No idea. Okay, we'll need to have that answered when it comes to the floor.
I don't think, we'll see.
What computer software mapping program was used to draw the map?
I'm not Mr. Coons, and I think you know that, so I wouldn't know that.
Mr. Coons couldn't have drawn the map because,
Because what?
You took his map, and that's what we're looking at with all the census tracts and data?
Because at once, again, when we write a bill, We give it to DLS.
Okay, so-
They make sure it's constitutional.
Okay.
So the concept, i.e. the map that we voted on, is extraordinarily similar to that within 1,000 people in certain areas.
Okay, I've drawn some maps using, I think it's Tom's redistricting tool. So thank you. That's all. I'll let other people have an opportunity.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Kipke.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Earlier, Delegate, you made a statement that I'd like to ask you to clarify. You seem to indicate that you thought people on the Eastern Shore were narrow-minded.
Not at all.
That's sort of what you said, so I want to give you a chance to...
You say sorta, or did I say that?
It sounded like it to me, and a lot of people are...
Is that what I stated?
I believe so.
I said that people on the Eastern Shore were narrow-minded.
And so in the context of changing the districts so that they were broader-minded.
I'm sorry? I was talking about those that they elect. Couldn't be so narrow-minded. So no, the people I know on the Eastern Shore are wonderful people. I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, nor are they thinking that they're narrow-minded.
So can you help me better understand what you meant by broader-minded versus narrow-minded?
With the people that they elect are going to have to step outside of their comfort zone. If they're Republicans, they're going to have to go into Democratic areas and talk to them. If they're Democrats, they're going to have to go into Republican areas and talk to them because that's their constituency.
But one problem that we have under the current system, actually, before the gerrymandering before us, is this state has already been dramatically gerrymandered. And Republicans have a very difficult time recruiting candidates to run because they have zero chance. And this further exacerbates that. So I don't think that's exactly the case. My question for you is, how was the final map selected? And when it was selected, was it put forward to the public as this is the final map and invite the public to comment on it before final adoption? Or was there a process where a handful of maps were put forward for public comment and final adoption? Or did you just pick the one that you liked the best because it achieved your goals and adopted it?
You're looking at the public input. That's what today's for.
Yeah, but on the website, there's like, I don't know, a dozen maps that were put forward.
Okay.
Was the public at any point told, here's the top 3, provide us feedback?
No.
Okay. How was the final map determined? How was it narrowed down and selected?
I think each individual, and the hearings, especially the second hearing, really helped when individuals logged on and talked about which map that they wanted, and just listening to people's conversation. And I think everybody took their own personal interest in what they thought would be, best. And I think it came down fairly quickly, or easily, I should say.
Okay, and you're aware that all districts are virtually impossible for a Republican to have a competitive shot?
I would disagree, and especially knowing the voting in this state, I don't believe that's true at all. In fact, like I said, 5 of the 8 districts lose Democratic support and now have more Republicans.
And my last question is, this map looks very similar to the one that was struck down in court.
I don't know if you saw the one that was struck down in court then, because this looks nothing like that. In fact, that was like, I'd actually asked that one to be put up so you could see how dramatically different it was. But to be clear, go ahead, apologize. You were asking a question.
Yeah, so there are aspects to this map that are similar to the one that was struck down. Mm-hmm. Were any of Judge Battaglia's indicators, her causes for concern, considered in the deliberations regarding this map?
Personally, yes. Would you like me to expound?
Yes.
I actually wrote it down. So because I've read Judge Battaglia's ruling as well as many others, I think it was the Towles, Maryland Committee versus Towles, which drove the 1967 litigation. And basically, as I stated earlier, that in reading Judge Battaglia, I felt that her thought process in Article 3, Section 4 applying to Congress flies in the face of not only the intent of this body in 1967, 1970, and 1972, but it's in direct contradiction to the citizens of the state, because they made it very clear in 1967 that they did not want the same standard for congressional maps and legislative maps. And in 1970, again, because we're still under federal mandate to fix the system, they focused on what was considered the only broke system, which was our state maps. And the ballot question was very clear. It mentioned nothing about congressional maps. And we do not have the right, even if that was our intent in 1970, 1972, to mislead the public into voting for something that they didn't know about. It's an illegal ballot question. It was reviewed by drafted by the Secretary of State and reviewed by the Attorney General. So to the best of their knowledge, it was legal. So again, and I think you can, at least your side can appreciate judges being wrong. And I'm not going to call her a rogue judge, but I will say that I believe that she misapplied the standard, one, and two, that she didn't read all of the legislative history. Because if she would have seen that 1967, like I said, and 1970 and 1972, and also she reviewed it as a clause-bound document, because Article 3, Section 3 talks only about the General Assembly, and Section 5. When they say legislative districts, they mean General Assembly only. So she was very clause-bound in her interpretation. And 94 pages, anybody who's a lawyer in here, if you take 94 pages to get somewhere, it's because you're jumping through a lot of hoops to do so. So while I did take into account, and I read that, I've got 20 pages of just my breakdown, it was extraordinarily incorrect. And again, that's why I'll say it again, the Constitution, under Rucho, it made it very clear that not only do they think that that they're allowed to gerrymander politically, the Supreme Court went so far as to say that if it wasn't supposed to be political, they wouldn't have put it in the hands of politicians. So to be very clear, it said, while gerrymandering may be incompatible with democratic principles, such claims are not justicable in federal courts and only therefore in state courts. Then we go to your second question. And the second question revolves around Article 3, Section 4. And does that apply to congressional redistricting? Historically, it doesn't. And in fact, there have been a multitude of cases after the Zalega case in which the Court of Appeals made it very clear that Article 3, Section 4 only applies to Maryland General Assembly. But to answer your question even further, if she was indeed right, when we put forth our state maps, that's not a bill, is it? You've been here. It's not. But our federal maps are. The state maps, when they're appealed, where does that go? Directly to the Court of Appeals. But our federal maps don't. So even in practice, if we were using the same standard, apparently we've been doing it wrong for years. So historical context leads us to believe without a doubt that that was never meant to apply. So yes, I took everything into consideration when making this decision.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Wilson, I just wanted to go back to the question from Delegate Riley from earlier about why it's emergency legislation. I thought it was also true it was emergency legislation because the election's happening 150 days from now, and if it weren't, this would be taking effect on June 1st or July 1st or something like that. Is that correct?
That was probably the smarter answer, yes.
Okay. Just trying to help, thanks.
Madam Chair, I think Delegate Corman has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Delegate Wilson, population is pretty important when drawing these lines, the size of the districts.
Correct.
And that's why DLS and you made an adjustment to the map that was drawn by a private citizen?
Without a doubt.
Okay, so I heard some really compelling points from my colleague from the Eastern Shore about wanting to have communities of interest together. And it makes a lot of sense. The Eastern Shore is a different place. I think they have more in common with us and on the Western Shore than maybe my colleague sometimes wants to think. He even once admitted to me that he didn't hate mass transit as much as I like to pretend he did. But we have differences, so I think it makes sense that he wants the Eastern Shore to be the Eastern Shore. Do you know the last time the Eastern Shore from Cecil to Worcester had adequate population to sustain its own district?
I feel like you're giving me an answer you already know. Would you like me to look it up? You just want to tell me?
Does 1962 and 1965 sound right?
It does.
So since then, no matter what, the Eastern Shore has had to connect with somewhere on the Western Shore. Is that right?
That's correct, because they didn't have adequate population.
Okay. So just as a matter of population, the Eastern Shore cannot just be an Eastern Shore district.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Wilson.
Just a minute. Just a minute, please. I'm going to go to the one person at a time. Delegate Brent. Emily.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, and I also have some questions about District 1. I just want to clarify for the record, are there millions of people living in District 1? As far as you know?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so
I think
either.
there's exactly 771,925 people living in District 1.
Exactly. Okay. So you said something that I thought was very poignant, and you said that on the issue about whether or not people would have a voice, and you said they will have a voice. They are just Democrat. The voice may very well be Democrat. Is that something you said?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So you also alluded to the fact that we have elected a Republican governor. And how many times did we do that?
3 times.
3 times.
In my lifetime. I don't know, Delegate Buckle may know more.
Remember, I'm younger than you.
So, in fact, it is not a determination as to where you live necessarily as to how you will vote. We cannot make that determination. Is that correct? Okay. And the last question is with respect to the voice. Again, I want to go back to the voice. We are having a public hearing today.
Correct.
And witnesses are able to testify in what manner?
They're going to do it be it video or in person, like always.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Now, Delegate Grist, your second bite at the apple.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I wasn't going to, but I was mentioning, my district was mentioning. You talked about a tech corridor on the Eastern Shore potentially, but there's not.
I didn't. I apologize.
You were probably referring to Columbia, I think, because they're in a. So my question is, do they have any chicken houses in Columbia?
Apologize?
They have chicken houses. Chicken houses in Columbia, yeah. There are lots of them on the Eastern Shore.
Do you mean people that have chickens at their house?
Know what chicken.
I apologize, yeah. We don't have many.
We have them all over the shore. No, but the answer is no, because I think the Homeowners Association won't allow for even probably one chicken in Columbia, to be quite honest.
But I do know we have some in Southern Maryland.
But the point that I was making, Madam Chair, earlier is that there is absolutely no comparison between Howard County, northern Anne Arundel County, and the Eastern Shore, but there is a very strong comparison between the rest of Cecil County that will now be in District 3, Harford County, and northern Baltimore County. That's the point that I was trying to make. You can pick up the difference. There's about 450,000 people in the Eastern Shore in the 9 counties, but you can pick it up in the current District 1, and those areas much more relate to where I live.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's the point that I was trying to make. Thank you.
Appreciate it very much. Delegate Moon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I appreciate the litigation heads up from my colleagues here. So I guess in that light, I'm not sure I heard the provisions in the bill discussed much. So for the benefit of public explanation, can you explain the provisions relating to court jurisdiction that are in the bill and what they are intended to do?
Well, currently, unlike our legislative maps, our congressional maps are appealed to a circuit court. And for the purposes to expedite, any hearings, we're going to have them be able to appeal directly to the Supreme Court. So we're not slowing the process down.
Great. So that would get us a decision on our friend's litigation much sooner.
There you go.
Thanks.
Seeing no further questions. Oh, Delegate Hippie wants another bite at the apple as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this will be my final bite. So I appreciate that. So the governor made this statement before he left without taking any questions. He said that he wants a map that is an accurate reflection of our state. So here's my question for you. Is it an accurate reflection of our state to have 0 Republicans representing the state of Maryland in our federal delegation?
Again, I don't know how many times I can say this. It actually makes for the districts more competitive. And I know Maryland, and
That wasn't my question.
so because your question becomes specious at some point because you're making an assumption that there's no way a Republican can win in these districts, and that's just not true. And so I can't answer the question the way you want me to, presuming that a Republican cannot win, that a moderate Republican or a moderate Democrat can't carry the same amount of votes.
So in a state where there's 2.2 million Democrats registered, there's 1 million Republican registered, I'm asking you, I'll ask you it again, and if you don't want to answer it, that's the answer.
I thought I did.
Is it a fair reflection of our state's population to have 0 out of the 10 federal representatives in our state?
7. I'm sorry, there are 8, not 10.
No, there's 10 total.
I apologize. So you're asking that, is it fair? And I'm saying,
Well, the governor,
that's
before
not
he left, without taking questions, said we need a fair, an accurate reflection of our state and our representatives.
Yep, I heard him.
So my question again, for the 4th time, just a couple of attorneys talking here, is it an accurate reflection of our state's population to have 0 Republicans representing Maryland?
And I'm saying that's not a guaranteed outcome, so it's a specious question.
You and I both know
okay.
it's a guaranteed outcome.
You've asked that
Thank you, Madam Chair.
4 times. That's applesauce now. It's not just bite at the apple. But I do want to add, thank you all. I think I do want to correct the record that the governor did take questions, took a number of questions from both Democrats and Republicans before he left. And he did answer them. So
What's the number?
he took one from each. He didn't take, each person asked about 4 or 5 questions. So we're going to move on now.